We are the pupils
of Mount Sinai,
who help each other every day, sharing, taking turns, listen to what teachers say. We are the pupils of Mount Sinai. We are the pupils of Mount Sinai who make choices every day. Painting, reading, modeling with clay. We are the pupils of Mount Sinai. We are the pupils of Mount Sinai.
Good evening and welcome to another program of Budget at a Glance. We are continuing to examine the various aspects of the 2014 national budget, which was presented in the National Assembly on Monday, March 24. The size of that budget it is $220 billion. I have with me in studio today the Honorable Priya Manik Chand, the Minister of Education, and we will be examining the budgetary allocations for the education sector. Minister, welcome to the program.
Well, thanks for having me, Eddie. I'm very glad to be here.
Those are some of the beneficiaries of.
That's the future of Guyana, right
and,
there.
Certainly, and those are the ones who ultimately benefit from budgetary allocations. But I want us to talk a little about the monies that were allocated to the education sector. And I want to start off with the most topical aspect of it. But before we get into the nitty-gritties of the education sector, I just want quickly your general review of Budget 2014.
Yeah, I thoroughly enjoyed listening to Budget 2014. Not only because Ashley Singh, Minister of Finance, is eloquent and reads it very nicely, and I want to congratulate him for presenting a budget that is going to be of great impact to the people of Guyana and the nation of Guyana. But it was a joy to listen to because it was a great review of how we did last year and what we will do going forward. And there was no point in the budget that I was bored because at every point there was something for someone. And so that could sound a little cliche that we have something for everyone. But it really is very important. We speak about these things and they become abstract budget and money and billions and so on. We could get lost in that. But what does it mean? Why do we have a budget? Why do we make allocations and so on? It's for the little ones that you just saw. For them to go to school, for them to have an education, for them to be better than their parents were. And that's what life is, that kind of progress. There was there are provisions in this budget for farmers. There are provisions for workers. There are provisions for the various sectors, rice and sugar and gold and or children or women. It's a very comprehensive, holistic provision for the people of Guyana. And so I think it's going to be very hard to really knock any part of this budget sensibly, of course. So you can always knock it. But any kind of sensible criticism is going to be hard for this budget. So it was really a joy to listen to.
Okay, Minister, so we're going to get into the education sector. I see a lot of allocations this year for various programs and projects and initiatives in the 2014 national budget, especially with education. But I want us to talk about probably the most topical aspect of the 2014 national budget.
I'd love to hear what you think is the most
And,
topical aspect. I think the whole allocation, I'm thoroughly excited about actually getting into getting over the debates and making sure this money is appropriated. Hopefully there won't be any cuts to the budget as a whole or to education. But we are so excited in the Ministry of Education. We really want to just start implementing the program for 2014.
Yes, but or let me put it another way. A lot of buzz around this particular initiative, and that has to do with the allocation to increase the assistance to children going to school. That is the $10,000 added.
Yeah.
Care to speak a little to that?
It has been thoroughly welcomed. I mean, you heard from parents who were here touring and visiting how much appreciated it's going to be. And you heard from teachers what kind of impact they expect to see from this. Look, Guyana is undoubtedly doing better than it ever has been doing in its history. In fact, Minister Ashley Singh said very clearly to us that this is the first, after a long time, we've had 8 years of consecutive growth. We only saw that back in the 60s, 60s, 70s, somewhere around there. So the country has been doing very, very well in a world environment that does not allow, it's not, the circumstances don't allow us to be doing as well as we do. So this kind of great economic climate that we've been enjoying really came about because of great stewardship, great management, a vision that we never got lazy pursuing. So we've always seen where we want Guyana to go, and we've been pursuing that dream. And in the climate of the world crashing, economies crashing, people getting laid off and so on, Guyana continued to do well. We not only held our own, we grew. And so because of that, you can see additional benefits being meted out to or being given and received by worthy population groups. We, like I said, without a doubt, the population and groups have been doing better. And you know, the studies have been clear. The World Bank did a study on us, I think, sometime in 1991, and they said that I think it was 6 to 7% of our people were living in poverty. And then in 2007 or 2008, somewhere around there, they did a study again. Again, the World Bank, International Financial Organization, and they said that now it was 35% of our people living in poverty. So Guyana, under the PPP Civic, has cut poverty in half. So we have half the number of people living in poverty, and that's a huge accomplishment that should be cheered in any sector. Having said that, we recognize that, like in every other country, there are people who need. And even though we have taken more than half of the population that used to be in poverty out of poverty, there are persons who still need our help and who still need a leg up. And so there are many initiatives in this budget. If we stuck at education alone, you'd see quite a number of initiatives to make sure we actually give that leg up. And so it's always very easy to say we love Guyana, we love Guyana's children, and all this rhetoric that makes for great headlines. And then when it comes to showing how you love Guyana and Guyana's children by giving tangible benefits, giving a tangible help so that these children could succeed, people fall down. PPPC has never been a party that fell down on that. And so, you know, we've been giving a uniform grant every year to children. How did that come about? President Jack Dale was walking around. You know, the government is known for being on the ground with people, hearing what they need, hearing what they want. And people said, yeah, you build all these fancy schools and so on. And we now have schools to send our children to, but we're having a little bit of problems putting uniforms on their backs, outfitting them. And he immediately put a program in place, and that program has grown. So it used to be for our most needy children. It is now for every single child in the public school system. Every child is entitled to a uniform grant. And then we know that we have a snack or a hot meal for every child from nursery to grade 2. We have a snack or a hot meal program, fortified biscuits, fortified juice, to make sure our children can learn on a full stomach. The research is in. If children are hungry, it's less likely that they would pay attention. And we have seen the attendance figures grow. In fact, in speaking to some of the teachers who were on tour here, they said very clearly to us that in their community, in their schools, they have seen the numbers grow in terms of how many children are attending school. And then this year, in addition to all that assistance, free textbooks, free exercise books, and all those kinds of interventions, this year, President Ramatar's cabinet is introducing a $10,000 per child in the public school system to assist parents to send their children to school. And, you know, it is hugely, I mean, people are so grateful. They're hugging me on the streets. You heard from some of the parents just now, total enthusiasm, really looking forward to this, because at the end of the day, especially single parents, you have 3, 4 children, some delinquent father who helped you make them and then disappeared and gone on with his life, not looking back to see how they'll go to school and so on. Parents find it hard. And so we have seen We know the story of many children going to school for 3 weeks and then the last week of the month they kind of staying home because their parents are not, they just can't manage. Now, that's not the majority of our population. But when we're catering in a country that's doing well, we are just as good as how we treat our most vulnerable groups. And so that is how you see the love of the government coming out in interventions like these. So while more of the country is doing better, and there's no doubt about that in all the international reports, and just looking on, you see that we cannot leave persons behind. And so this kind of intervention is really aimed at helping out our parents to give them that leg, give them that hand they need to make sure their children's lives are better than theirs, which would mean that Guyana becomes better. Guyana develops more, Guyana has more capacity, and so on in years to come.
Minister, in the ministry is currently working on the Education Strategic Plan 2014 to 2018. This year, too, there is a significant budgetary allocation for the implementation of that plan. I know you would have spoken before about what is the objective and so forth of this plan, but tell us a little about, again, about the plan itself and how the money will be utilized.
Right, so the plan really, we were just finishing a plan period 2013 to 2018. And it's 5 years where we say where we want to be 5 years from now. We have exceeded some of the projections we had made in 2013, where we said, in 208, where we said, for example, we said we wanted some X number of teachers trained. We have exceeded that by a large amount, more than 1,000. So we don't just receive this money. We have a plan. What are the things that are most needed by the people of Guyana, by our country, to make sure the landscape of Guyana changes? And how do we determine what is needed? We go village to village, community to community, PTA to PTA, and we talk to parents. And we hear what it is they want, what is it they'd like to see happening with their children. We review results. We look at how many of our children can read. We look at how many are going to school. And then we come up with a plan. What is it we want to see Guyana achieve in the next plan, in the next 5 years? I can tell you, we already have universal primary education. That means every single child of primary age can access a primary school. We have 85% of our children attending nursery school. That's the highest in the Commonwealth Caribbean. It's higher on the coast. It's a little bit lower in the hinterland. We want to get to universal secondary education. And we say in this period, 2013 to 2018, we are going to be achieving universal secondary education. That means every child across this country will be able to access a secondary education. This budget this year allows us to bring in universal secondary education in a couple of regions. I can think of one offhand, Region 5, with the allocations made in this year's budget. Once they were to be approved by the National Assembly, every student in Region 5 is going to be able to access a general secondary education. That is an amazing feat. Region 2 is almost there. And so we'd be able to work with regions, but we say we'll be able to do this before the end of the next 5 years. We want to continue training teachers. So right now we have 70% of our teachers are trained. This is the highest that the nation has ever seen. We want to take it to 80% before the next 5 years. But we could set these targets and say these things and they just sound bites. We don't want them to be sound bites. We actually need to fund it and strategically plan to get there. And so the money from this year's budget is going to be taken so that we could actually start implementing these plans we have that are outlined in the strategic plan that we will publish shortly.
Having said that, I saw a significant allocation for with a lot of emphasis on infrastructure, but not just infrastructure. A lot of emphasis too on the differently abled, trying to bring them into the mainstream school
right,
system.
because as a government, we feel strongly that we are as good as how we look after the most vulnerable amongst us. And that is why this budget, judge us on this budget. Look at how we're treating children. Look at how we're treating old people. Look at how we're treating the disabled. These are groups that can easily be forgotten in the crush and the race to develop rapidly because they're small groups. So you could leave them behind without any great significant impact on your economy. That is not how we operate as a government. That is how they were treated before. And there's a marked difference in how budgets repeatedly treat our aged population, our young people, our children, our disabled groups. And so, for me, that is how a responsible government, a caring government, one who loves its people, would behave. And that is what is reflected in Budget 2014.
I think one of the interesting things going through the allocation for the education sector, and I want to stick within this, the education sector, the way the monies are distributed, even within that sector itself. I'm looking at the construction, rehabilitation, extension of schools,
Right.
and you could see it spread across the country.
Right. Well, you know, look, first of all, generally, budget, when you use the word budget in your house, for me, it means apportioning, appropriate amounts or apportioning what you have because it mightn't be appropriate. You might want more or need more, but this is all you have, and you have to make sure you pay your rent and you pay your bills and you buy clothes and you buy food and you leave some for entertainment. And so you have to apportion. What the PPP is remarkable for, and that has been noted by international reports, that has been noted by the people of Guyana repeatedly, and in fact, just the fact that we have people have continued to place their confidence in us says that they feel this. And we don't develop Georgetown alone or Region 5 alone or Region 10 alone. This is equitably distributed. So you will see while we're building 1 mile in Linden, which was burnt in a fire that was a fire deliberately and maliciously set, you will see that we're building Zeeburg because the school is falling down. It's decades old. And because of various external circumstances, including exposure to what might be some sea salt air and so on. I'm not an expert. I'm just telling you what the report we got. It's in need of repairs. At the same time that we're doing that, we're putting down housing for teachers in Sand Creek. That's Region 9. So there's development going on. Region 5, we're extending the Maikoni Secondary School. And so all across the country, you will see that almost $3 billion that is set aside for infrastructure and education. Every single person gets a little bit, regions wise, where you see we don't say the children in Georgetown will access 10 exercise books more than the child in Region 8. We make sure everybody gets the same thing. We don't say, it's going to be easier for us to give the children on the coast the 10 grand, the $10,000. It's going to be a hassle to do it in the hinterland. Let's forget them. We don't do that. So you are right. There is equitable distribution of all our goods and services. All our efforts are, we never think in terms of region specific. And that is reflected again in this year's budget.
Let us talk a little about, you mentioned teachers training as well as tertiary education. I see some emphasis again in the 2014 budget to improve the programs and maybe expand and add new programs at the University of Guyana, as well as creating programs
Right.
initiatives for teachers.
Well, let's look at teacher training. There used to be a time when you could only train at the Central College in Turkine, Teachers Training College, or one or two satellite places. What has happened under this government is we've taken teacher training centers all over this country so that we allow persons from every nook and cranny to be trained once you're qualified. That is what has caused us to see this great and massive jump in the number of trained teachers that are serving our children. Then you see that we have an allocation in this year's budget set aside for persons who want to do university courses online. So there used to be a time too that the University of Guyana meant wherever you came from in this country, you had to go to Turkine. And it served us, but it wasn't serving us well. Under the PPP Civic, we have now 10. And then we're going further. We're saying that, look, we can serve populations that are far away if we have online courses, and we're making provisions for that. That should come out in this year's budget. So it's not only reconciling of what we have, we're doing that, we're strengthening what we have, and we're also expanding in various areas. And this is not only in education, although I know you brought me here just to speak about education, but it's in every sector. You'll see growth in every sector. And that is why we've had, as the minister has said, a 5.2% growth in 2013, but an 8 years of consecutive growth over the last 8 years.
Minister, you spoke to the issue briefly of tertiary education and taking the programs out. And again, looking at the budget, I see allocations for not just to add new programs, but to ensure that students who or individuals who want to pursue a tertiary education but may not be able to do so, to pay the tuition on a cash basis. Tell us a little about the
Loan
monies
program.
for the loan program.
Yeah, it's no university that can be sustained on sensibly and qualitatively sustained if there weren't income coming in. So most universities across the world charge their students to go and get their various degrees or certificates and diplomas and so on. University of Ghana is charging, but because the government is aware that persons need that hand, they need that leg up that we spoke about earlier, we are willing as a government to hold your hand and walk you through the degree program. So at the end, we can all celebrate that here is another young Guyanese who is qualified, ready to take our country to that next level. And this is the $450 million is set aside for the government's, for the UG's loan program. This is going to be plugged directly into helping our students pay their fees by allowing them to access funds from this revolving loan.
Let's talk a little bit about the TechVoc training. A lot of emphasis on that as well.
A lot of emphasis on that. There used to be a time when if you wanted to get trained in technical vocational education, you had to go to specific places. We now have TVET centers in regions 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 10, with an intention of expanding that even further. And really, TVET is the way the world is going. We have to prepare our populations to meet the skills needs that are emerging. We have different emerging economies in many of the countries. Ghana is no different. And we have to prepare persons to be able to work in those sectors. Because of that, we are training first of all, we've built multi-million-dollar facilities that can train our young people to work in these areas, in these fields. We have more work to do, of course, which is why you have an allocation here. We have to make sure we have trained teachers and so on. It was interesting to watch the State of the Union address that President Obama in the U.S. had. And he mentioned some of the things that we're already doing. In fact, when he did his breakout and went to the town hall meetings and so on, he spoke about 4 hours on the floor, 4 hours in the classroom, so that the student graduating actually has practical experience about what's happening. This is where Guyana is at. This is where we've been for the last 2-3 years. We've been really plugging and pushing technical vocational education. Sometimes we don't speak enough about these things. But the more than 3,000 students who are in the TVET centers right now understand how important this is for them. We're moving to a place where we can we can offer our students qualification, Caribbean recognized qualification. That is not something we can do alone. We have to work with the other CARICOM countries, the region as a whole, to make sure we have standards and that we standardize the process. So very shortly, our students are going to be capable of earning the CVQ, Caribbean Vocational Qualification Certificates, which means that with the CSME and so on, they can just go to other countries with these certificates and work and offer their expertise in return for a salary all over the region. And so we are well on our way. Guyana is at this great place where it's really exciting, in my view, to be a young Guyanese now. We are at a place where we can take off. We're at a place where there's so much opportunity. It's really about you availing yourself of these opportunities, and I see it. Every time I speak to young people, they have such a wide array of choices that if you don't help to guide them, they could end up spending a lot of time trying to decide which one, where, what should I do, rather than decisively doing something. And I understand that perfectly. I mean, actually, I don't even, young people are probably not, I'd say you probably don't even need to know what you want to do until your late 20s. So people have that problem now. But we're definitely as a country in a different place. But we have to make sure we take the leap that is needed to take us to that other level. And that leap has to be taken by all of Guyana. The PPP Civic alone can do it, and we've pretty much been doing it alone for a while, but we could develop more rapidly, develop at a pace that our people deserve if we were to have a constructive conversation across the aisle, a constructive opposition who opposes not because they feel they have to oppose, but who is constructive in their opposition, and who is constructive in their contributions also. So, I'm really going to, I suppose we'll see what happens in the debate and when the estimates come up. But I really hope the opposition parties listen to their supporters and not beat up Guyana simply because they can.
But you're
that's
hearing,
being a bully.
You're hearing comments already, Minister, and I was about to ask you, I think you've started to answer my next question. And that has to do with, you're hearing comments about cutting the budget. It's going to be a difficult debate and so forth. One, your optimism, and two, what is your call again to...
Look, I think there are different categories of persons. There are people who will be critical because they can be, and that's all they do. They're negative, so they wake up in the morning, see a bright sunny day, they'll see a cloud somewhere. Instead of, they're just negative by nature. And then there are people who are critical because they want to hear themselves and they need to be relevant, so they write a letter here, they write a letter there, and try to be stay relevant or become relevant. And then there are people who genuinely have a different view and express that view. I assume that everyone who's being critical genuinely has a different view, and that there's some of what they're saying that we can take into consideration and even implement so that we have a better country. And so I read and listen to everything that is critical with that in mind. Taking out the good things, tossing away the bad things. But I am sorry. I heard different comments with persons saying, "Oh, the budget is there's no growth that is going to come out of this budget, and it's a maintenance budget and so on." That's just for me, just really I depressing myopia. It's just such a narrow vision, and that's why I like being associated with the PPP Civic. They have this vision. They know we want to go to this place. They want Guyana, all our children to be accessing primary education. So many numbers to be literate. And this is how we will get here. And here is how we have to fund it. And we have to stay on this track, persevere, and pursue this dream and get there. Now, you have comments from people like quotes that you could pull up on the internet, Mahatma Gandhi and Nelson Mandela and Martin Luther King and all these people who no sensible person would question their wisdom, where they say very clearly that education is the only way that you can change a person's life. It's the only way that you can properly develop a nation. It is the one thing that can alleviate poverty, the one sure thing. And yet you have persons saying, "Oh, this is a maintenance budget." Here is a budget that gives the lion's share to the education sector. You don't see results in education within a year, but these children, the children that you had here today, they 20 years from now are going to be far better off for this year's allocation than they were 20 years ago, than their counterparts, that their peers were, or the children 20 years ago were. And so you have to be able to look forward and see what this will do down the line. But you first have to have a vision of where you want to see Guyana. And so I think eventually the people of Guyana are going to speak, and they're going to drag their leaders on along with them. This the allocations in the budget are not for they're for all of Guyana. And so I hope that the opposition listens to their supporters and not just, the petulance and this childishness with walking out and screaming silly things across the island. So on. Hopefully, we're going to see a reduction of that this year if they can help it.
Minister, I want to thank you very much for joining me this evening. Of course, we were discussing the budgetary allocations for the education sector. So again, thank you very much.
Yeah,
And
thanks
I
for
want to thank
having
you
me.
very much for joining us.